Thank you all, and I apologize for not memorizing my lines. As you heard, I'm Jeff Martinka. I'm the Executive Director of Neighborhood House of Milwaukee. Neighborhood House is a community center founded in 1945. We're located on Milwaukee's near west side. We offer top quality preschool programs, after school and summer camp for kids and teenagers, and we happen to be the largest educator of refugees in the state of Wisconsin. When I first read, thank you. When I first read Until the Flood, the play and its characters sounded strangely familiar to me. It occurred to me when I read the play, and as I heard it tonight, as I listened to Dael's words, that the 8 composite characters might well have been Milwaukee residents, talking about Lake Michigan instead of the Mississippi, about the realities of life in Amani or Sherman Park instead of Ferguson, about the gentrification of Walker's Point or Brewers Hill instead of Tower Grove in St. Louis. In fact, I was also struck that I was a composite of some of those St. Louis characters. And this part is embarrassing. Some of the characters sounded way too familiar, way too much like me. Who am I? I'm the son of a turbine mechanic and his wife of 8 children. They graduated, my parents graduated from childhood homes in Cudahy in South Milwaukee and migrated to the then suburban success of Hales Corners as one of 8. And especially after my parents' divorce, there was no financial support after high school. In my mind, I and my siblings were all self-made. We created our own futures with our own efforts. I'm embarrassed that some of the pridefulness that you heard a few minutes ago from the play's Doug Ray Smith, that notion of I created my own destiny sentiments, sounded like me, at least before the electrician and landlord morphed into his killing machine fantasies. I still believe that I created the comfortable world which I now live in, but I created it with built-in advantages that gave me a personal toolbox and a starting line that was way closer to success than many kids of color in the US and kids of color here in Milwaukee. As I told you, I grew up in Hales Corners. We walked or bicycled everywhere in our world, safely, anytime. None of our 8 kids had house keys. We didn't need them. Our house was always open. Transport yourself to Milwaukee's near west side. In 2015, Neighborhood House teenager and facility intern Joshua Words was the last of 145 Milwaukeeans murdered that year. At 17 and living about 10 blocks east of our community center, Joshua was shot in a botched robbery attempt as he walked a friend home from a nearby bus stop. They were going to his house to play a night of video games. A few months earlier, Neighborhood House student J-Ro was killed in a home invasion that became murder number 93 that year when J-Ro tried to defend his family from a robber with a gun. He lived 4 blocks south of Neighborhood House's International Learning Program at 25th in Wisconsin. In my young world, walks to bus stops and mornings with family were never fatal. School was safe, parents were involved, families were generally intact, college was the norm, success was expected, and murders didn't happen. Cops were to be feared. In Hales Corners, cops were to be feared when you were drinking or kissing after hours in Whitnell Park, and you weren't worried that the cops were going to shoot at you. You were worried they were going to call your parents. The starting points, as you understand now, for me and my siblings were so very different from the starting points for J-Ro and Joshua Words, or the starting line for the teens you heard of here in the play, for Hassan and Paul. I can only fleetingly glimpse what it means to be a person of color in our community. Like when Neighborhood House kids tell me where they stay instead of where they live, a de facto acknowledgement of the transience and fragility of home for many of the kids in our hometown. Or last weekend when I sat on a bus en route to our nature center, a 17-year-old invited me to show some videos that he created. Why did his self-portraits, think of your own when you were a kid, why did his include explosions and scenes of loss, disappearance? Why was he the oldest male in his family photos? Now what I'd say is the play you just saw with me was very dark, and what we're used to in plays is some sense of redemption. It always happens in Hollywood. You go home and you have a sense that there's going to be better things. And I would love to tell you that I've got some great things to offer you. All I can tell you is I believe in cumulative impacts of small things. I encourage you to join me and try to be some of the bridges out of the darkness here in Milwaukee. Try to do little things. Try to be a mentor. Try to talk to kids every week. Try to find a few things you see in a kid and praise it. Try to talk to someone that isn't in your circle, that might not look like you if you can. Try to visit a neighborhood or a business that you haven't visited before to form a little bit of a bridge. It's only in small cumulative impacts like that that perhaps we too can find our way out of the darkness that you've heard tonight. So thanks for listening.